let's talk about why it's important to stop believing and start thinking. Now, before I get into this, people who follow my channel know that this is a channel about cognitive biases, logical fallacies, about seeking virtual and literal treasures, about problem solving, about wisdom seeking. It's about thinking more clearly so that we can get the kinds of results that we want in our life, in our gameplay, in our workplace, and all sorts of things. And I'm a person of faith. So belief is really important to me, and it has an important role in our life. But what I'm talking about here is something different. I'm talking about how we use belief versus thinking and clear thinking when it comes to solving problems and discovering those literal and metaphorical treasures. And so when it comes to these matters, I think it's really important. Notice I didn't say I believe it's really important. I said, I think it's really important that we stop believing and that we start thinking. Let me explain what I mean by this. If you look in the current treasure hunting community, like this John Collins Black, there's Treasure Inside treasure hunt community. You'll look on Facebook groups and other places, and you see lots of people who are talking about where they believe the treasure is located. In fact, I saw a recent post on Facebook where someone posed the question, and they were talking about the Appalachian Trail box, and they posted, how many of you believe that the Appalachian Trail box is in North Carolina? Now, that framing might seem like just semantics or language, but it has an impact, and I want to talk about why and why it might actually deter you from finding the kind of success that you want on a treasure hunt. So as I often do in my videos, I've jotted down 5 points that I'll walk you through about my argument for why thinking is more important than believing. So the first one is called the language trap. What I jotted down here was, I believe turns hunches more into dogmas. I think keeps your mind open to being corrected. So belief language brings with it this kind of value, this kind of moral element to it. And if someone challenges your belief, well, that's a really personal thing. But if you're thinking something, you think it might be true, that leaves you more open to correction. And that's what we need when we're especially trying to solve problems and we're involved in endeavors where you're probably not going to get it right the first time, or maybe even the first 10 or 20 or 30 or 40 times. It's going to take multiple efforts and iterations. And so there has to be a kind of posture of humility, of holding on to an idea lightly. And beliefs cause us to sometimes cling, whereas just using the thinking language can cause us to hold on to it a little more loosely so we can let go of it when need be to hold on to the real thing. Make sense? Let's try the second one. Second one is the cognitive freeze. So belief activates cognitive biases, especially confirmation bias, where you believe something to be true, and so you start seeing it everywhere around you. And this is one of the biases. I have a whole video on confirmation bias and many other different kinds of cognitive biases. But this is sort of how the belief framing does things. The more you believe something, the more you try to look for proof that it's true. Now, when you think about something, though, you may actually be more open to challenging your ideas, to looking for holes in it, to improve it, to make it better. See how that's more helpful when you're trying to solve a real problem or treasure hunt? Third one is thinking as exploring. And so this is where you want to consider using language like, well, it appears, or there seems to be strong or compelling evidence that it could be here. So when you start using that kind of language, that's exploratory language. You're leaving the door open for the possibility that you're wrong. You're diving into it. You're going to test it out. It's more of a sort of experimental perspective and approach. Experimentation and exploration is what leads to discovery in treasure hunts and problem solving and other things like that. The belief framing sometimes deters you from doing that. And so we want to be really careful. The fourth one is maybe a little bit of repetition here, but what I wrote down was the map, the metaphorical map that we're trying to follow to discover a treasure, solve a problem. It isn't sacred. So belief language goes into something that is really deeply personal and kind of sacred and really special and important to us. But we don't want our thinking, our ideas, our theories to be treated as sacred. We want to treat them as something that we can test, that we can dispose of, that we can toss out, that maybe it gets us a little bit along the way, but then we have to discard it for something better. And that's a different kind of framing than belief framing. So another reason why I would argue good to set the belief language aside, use the thinking language, use the sort of exploration kind of language. And then the last one that I put down is, belief really is kind of ending the game. When you start using belief language, that's seeking some kind of closure. But thinking language is really just seeking clarity. I'm thinking about it. I'm looking at it from this perspective. There seems to be some evidence in this direction, but I'm open to other possibilities. So one is really kind of closing down your thinking about the issue, and you're exploring and you're trying to solve it and trying to understand it better. And the thinking language is one that really drives you into it further. And that's what we want to be successful. Now, there are some great thinkers. I come from a Christian background. And so, again, I want to be really clear that I'm not arguing against the role of belief in our lives. It's incredibly valuable and powerful. And in fact, there's an ancient phrase that Christians talk about. It says faith-seeking understanding, that in the right time, in the right circumstance, and having faith and having a belief that actually opens your eyes to be able to see things that you wouldn't see otherwise, to notice things that you would otherwise miss. And that plays a very important part in the human experience, in our lives, in my own Christian life. So I'm not arguing against that. I'm just saying that the mental tools that are going to get you the most progress in most situations, I would contend, are the thinking skills, the tentative kinds of ideas, holding on to your theories loosely or lightly, and then see where that leads. I hope you find this useful. I look forward to your comments.